Too sexy for this cave. Too sexy for this cave. Too sexy for this cave. Oh my god, where do I start with this episode? Where? What coffee were they drinking in the writer's room, and can I have some? Hi guys, welcome to a video, and in today's video we're just going to be discussing thoughts and theories on episode 3 of Yellowjackets season 3. And there will be spoilers in this video, so you have been warned. Does anybody else think that the man with no eyes looks like Michael Jackson? Because I really do. I don't think I can really take him seriously as a horror figure, and now it turns out he's from an ice cream commercial. The Dairy Queen is not my lover. I actually think that Ty seeing him in that commercial as a child is such a quirky and clever twist. I'm pretty sure none of us saw that coming. The writers keeping it fresh. I like it. And I think it's interesting he's from Ty's childhood because it could possibly indicate that Ty actually has some unresolved trauma from her childhood that contributed to her developing other Ty and being haunted by No Eyes Michael Jackson. I mean, in some ways you could look at it as though her childhood is haunting her through this figure of the No Eyes man. And interestingly, this theory also gives new meaning to the foie gras covered in cotton candy, because cotton candy has connotations of youth and childhood. And the foie gras underneath the cotton candy could suggest that there's a darkness embedded in Ty's youth. I also appreciated how the origins of No Eyes was revealed to us through Van's old VHS tapes, and how intertwined Ty and Van's narratives and characters are. It's cool. There's actually a lot to discuss about both Ty and Van this episode. First of all, I thought the shot of the fishes with the orange markings at Van's doctor's appointment was a beautiful artistic touch, because the orange not only relates to Van's hair colour and the fire theme that we've seen intertwined with her and Ty this season, but the markings were also reminiscent of her scars, so that small detail was appreciated by me. Anyway, it's revealed at the appointment that Van's cancer has stopped growing and that there's a possibility of remission, and Van shares this with Ty, who connects it back to the wilderness, blessing them because of the quote-unquote sacrifices that were made with Nat and the waiter's death, which is exactly what a lot of us were theorizing from the last 2 episodes. And we can see Ty fully embracing these beliefs once again. And I think this ties into the wider theme of the adults regressing mentally back to their time in the wilderness this season. Because in episode 3, we also see Shauna explode with rage in a way that's very similar to the way that teen Shauna behaved in the wilderness. And interestingly, this is brought forth by her seeing Jackie's necklace on Callie, and her intense reaction is very revealing of just how raw Shauna's feelings for Jackie still are. I think it's clear that there's more to their connection than we currently know, but we'll have to wait and see. And it's also telling that Lottie was the one to give Callie this necklace, knowing Shauna would see it, because as we know, Lottie is very keen to bring the women back under the influence of the wilderness. She wants them to regress and has a recruiting for a cult-like mentality. It's also interesting that Lottie tells Shauna it doesn't mean what you think it does, presumably in relation to the necklace. I mean, from seeing how the necklace ended up on Pit Girl and then ended up with Lottie, it's clear that there's more to this necklace than we currently know. That necklace is very interesting. But going back to Ty and Van, it's interesting how at first Van is a little skeptical of Ty's relating the good news to the wilderness, but after they visit the old ice cream parlor together and see the coyote with prey in its mouth, they both acknowledge that this is a sign from it. And this suggests that Van is also regressing back to the wilderness belief system. This actually connects to a wider theme this episode of seeing the divine in the everyday, and the characters attributing certain things that happen to them to a divine entity, which we'll talk more about later later on, but Van saying we know what it wants more, is a hint that Ty and Van are perhaps about to dip into some very dark things underneath their return to this belief in sacrificing others for their survival. Next, there seemed to be a continual theme throughout this episode, hinting that some of what we're seeing with these characters is an imagined reality instead of a genuine reality. For example, Mari mentions that there's maybe two versions of reality in her conversation with Coach Ben, and that one version can be hiding the bad one, which is significant, and later on we see a commercial with the words "The Land of Make-Believe," with the voiceover mentioning Hope, New Jersey, and both of these things hint that there's an imagined version of reality being played out, a more hopeful one perhaps, because the actual reality is so unpleasant. But the question is, which parts of these characters' lives are real and which parts are imagined? Are all the teens dying of hunger in real life and just collectively imagining this springtime cottagecore lifestyle as a way of coping? Have they all been inhaling the gas that Coach Ben mentioned, which has been messing with their minds and perception of reality? Is the entire adult timeline just the teens imagining their future lives and they were never rescued from the wilderness at all? Or is it related to the teens and adults believing in this made-up wilderness entity to help themselves cope? Let me know your thoughts, because I'm really torn between all of these theories. Misty and Shauna have some really interesting scenes this episode. In fact, their car ride was my favorite part of this episode. It just tapped into the vibes and chaos of season 1, which I loved. And I think Misty making a comment comparing herself and Shauna to Thelma and Louise was significant and could be foreshadowing that they're going to end up on the run from the police together at some point for some reason. There's a high likelihood that one or both of them end up killing someone. That comment also ties into the theme of female friendship, which is relevant to Misty's storyline this season, so I think that comment definitely had some significance. We see Misty also trying to get some reassurance about her friendship with Shauna, and it ends badly with them having an argument where Shauna accuses Misty of cutting the brakes to her car. Now, I think it's fairly obvious that the brakes were cut by either Shauna's stalker or maybe even Lottie, considering how shady she's been acting. I mean, I also wouldn't be surprised if it turns out that it was Misty. But either way, Misty doesn't take this accusation well, and her burning the picture symbolizes that she's done with these women for the moment. My guess is this will lead her back to Walter, and I don't think this is a good thing because I heavily suspect he is the big bad this season, and he's planning to do something to the other women as revenge for what they did to somebody he was close to, namely Melissa, since there are a lot of plausible theories going around that he has some kind of connection to her. So whether Misty will cotton on to that or whether she'll join him is yet to be seen. Going from the Thelma and Louise comment, it's a possibility that she actually comes to Shauna's rescue in the end. Moving on to Shauna and Melissa, even though their scene together was brief, it was significant because this scene suggested that they do actually have a connection. As it was left last episode, a lot of us, me included, were wondering if their relationship was going to be purely related to survival tactics or game playing, but the emotional acting in this scene suggests an actual connection between them, and I think that's why it gets messy. However, what's also interesting is that you can already see Shauna manipulating Melissa through this connection. Shauna asks Melissa, "You're not going to be boring, are you?" Which indicates that her interest in her is dependent on the way she behaves. And all of this aligns with what Sophie Nalise was talking about in interviews, where she mentioned there's both an element of connection, but also manipulation from Shauna in this relationship. And finally, the cave and hallucination sequence this episode was very interesting. The girls are trying to hunt down Coach Ben, and whilst they are in the caves looking for him, they begin to hallucinate. And from Coach Ben's comment about the gas, we can presume that that's possibly the reason for these hallucinations. But at the same time, nothing happens in this show by accident. There's usually a meaning behind the things that we're shown. So in Akila's hallucination, you have her stuffing her face with berries and then conversing with the talking alpaca. And there's been an ongoing connection between Aquila and the animals this season, especially with Travis pointing out that the animals love her. And so I think this scene suggests that her storyline is connected to both animals and sustenance in some way. Whether she is going to have to slaughter all of the animals. If we think back to Tai eating foie gras, there's a suggestion of animal cruelty and consumption being a theme this season, which could well be connected to Aquila. Or whether Aquila dies trying to protect the animals or something to do with them leads to her death are all possibilities. Interestingly, in her conversation with the alpaca tells her to be careful not to get bitten, and Aquila responds with sheep don't bite, and then the alpaca tells her that everything with teeth bites and will defend itself. And I think the specific mention of sheep is interesting here because sheep can mean people who follow. So this could be referring to the followers of the group who are potentially going to end up doing horrible things, possibly in relation to using their teeth to survive, especially since it's looking like there's going to be a shift in power dynamics within the group, which could lead to the followers having to do certain things in order to keep themselves alive. We can also see during this hallucination that Aquila gets sucked into dirt, and going underneath the dirt has obvious death connotations. So I think there's a high likelihood of death in her storyline this season, but it may not be her. She may kill someone else. She may be a sheep. Then we have Van sitting in front of the fire, and we have already discussed the fire theories in my reviews of episodes 1 and 2, and there's nothing to really add to those theories from this scene, but it is significant that Van is sat in the cabin because it's possibly yet another clue that she was responsible for the cabin fire. Similar to the theory about Aquila being sucked into the dirt, Van being trapped in the fire could also be foreshadowing of her death as an adult. That would also make sense with all of the fire imagery they keep including with Tai and Van. And I can also see the writers saving Van from cancer only to kill her another way. Next we have Shauna, who is swimming in the water and then who sees what can be assumed is her son if he had survived. But she's unable to reach him, which is symbolic of the fact that they are parted by his death. And then Shauna gets pulled underneath the water. So it's a possibility that Shauna's storyline will involve water at some point. Will adult Shauna drown? Will teen or adult Shauna drown someone else? We know that Van and Aquila have connections to fire and animals respectively, and that these themes are significant for them. So it also makes sense that water is going to be significant for Shauna this season too. Jackie's snap bracelet is also interesting because each of the girls try it on, and Aquila puts it on just fine, Van hurts herself, and when Jackie puts it on Shauna, it starts to kill her. And I need your opinions on this because I can't work out what the snap bracelet represents. I mean, possibly the wilderness because it has the symbols on it, and if so, does it symbolize that Aquila survives somehow? Van gets seriously hurt and Shauna dies this season. Let me know your thoughts. Interestingly, the colours on the snap bracelet look like a washed out rainbow. And if this is correct, there's a significance in Jackie putting it on Shauna, given the fruity subtext between them. And it could suggest that we're going to get a confirmation that there were feelings between one or both of them at some point. But regardless of that, Jackie placing it around Shauna's neck has a connection to the necklace that Jackie gave Shauna, which could suggest that the necklace is going to lead to Shauna's death, or Shauna murdering someone later on in the season. And the last thing I want to talk about in relation to the hallucination sequence is there's a quote on the chalkboard by Ralph Waldo Emerson which reads, "Of all the ways to lose a person, death is the kindest." Now this quote being included could indicate that somebody in this scene is going to die. I mean, Jackie's already, yeah. But what's interesting is that Ralph Waldo Emerson was a writer and philosopher who led the transcendentalist movement of the mid-19th century. And transcendentalism is a philosophical and spiritual movement founded on the core belief of the inherent goodness of people and nature, and that while society and its institutions have corrupted the purity of the individual, people are at their best when truly self-reliant and independent. Another interesting note is that transcendentalists also saw the divine experience inherent in the everyday. And all of this is relevant because it suggests the characters are seeing the divine in just random occurrences, which is what we saw Tai Van doing with the death of the waiter and the coyote. They were connecting those things to this higher entity. But what's interesting in terms of transcendentalism is if we think about the way that the girls behave in the wilderness, it seems like the writers including this quote is almost a mockery of or commentary on transcendentalism, because of course the girls are self-reliant and free from societal influences or institutions out in the wilderness, but they don't behave in inherently good ways. They're in a tense bid for survival, which frequently leads to violence. Oh, it got deep. And speaking of survival, Coach Ben, you in danger, girl. You in danger. In my opinion, it seems like a lot of this episode is the writers telling us that there's no supernatural force or wilderness spirit actually affecting the characters' lives, and it's the characters believing in and attributing certain things that happen in their lives to this wilderness spirit that makes it real. However, I could be wrong. At this point, nothing is off the table, and I told you we were in for some serious twists and turns this season, so you better strap in. Okay guys, let me know your thoughts and theories on episode 3 down in the comments section below. Don't forget to subscribe for instant disappointment, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.